Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mike's MMA Picks Quick Morning Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown Show. We're here brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. Headed to UFC Boston this weekend. Friday morning, bright and early. Sun's just coming up. We've got some excellent fights on hand, 13 fights to be exact. I wouldn't be surprised to see 7 or so finishes looking up and down this card. We'll get things kicked off. First fight of the card, the curtain jerker. Believe it or not, is a heavyweight fight that is expected to go the distance. We've got Tanner Boser, who is a Canadian journeyman. You look up and down his record, he's traveled the globe. 28 years old, comes in 8,600 in DraftKings. 7,600 on the other side of the coin here. We've got Danny Spitz. Danny Spitz, 6-2 record. UFC fighter who has fought the likes of Anthony Hamilton. We know that name well in DraftKings land. Believe it or not, Anthony Hamilton has continued his career and has rattled off 3 consecutive victories. Most folks would think he's been retired. Tanner Boser, you look up and down his resume, and the guy has only been finished once in his entire career, and that loss came at the hands of the late Tim Hague. So this fight, a few things that stuck out to me when watching tape is you've got Danny Spitz, who is a athletic fighter, former football player, who is coming in with huge reach advantage, and he's the much more athletic fighter. You've got Tanner Boser as the -140 favorite, who is a grimy grinder, seems to rely on his leg kick. Danny Spitz incorporates a lot of movement, moves in a similar fashion to Travis Brown out there. Both fighters are still under 30 years of age. This fight is expected to go to a decision at -150. I think we've got some value here on Danny Spitz, especially when you consider you're looking up and down this card on underdogs who may possibly come through. So I'm actually going to roll with the underdog here at +120. He's going to be my pick. You may not get that finish, though. As I previously mentioned, Boser, only one finish loss in his career. Next up, we've got Kevin Holland making his return to the octagon, taking on Brendan Allen, who we know from the Contender Series, but he's also fought a few notable fighters in his day. Brendan Allen, only 23 years of age, 7,300 in DraftKings, +145 underdog. The line has closed significantly in Brendan Allen's favor here. Kevin Holland, -165 favorite, 8,900 in DraftKings. Kevin Holland comes in with an 81-inch reach, fighting out of Texas, only 26 years of age, so both of these guys are very young fighters. This is a very dangerous fight as far as DraftKings goes. You've got Kevin Holland, who, how can you have faith in Kevin Holland and his ability to execute a game plan to a T? The guy gets caught up in the moment. We saw this in his Contender Series fight. When he came into the UFC, though. He took on Thiago Santos, and we saw the heart, the will that he showed in that fight. He is definitely a tough out. The thing about Brendan Allen, though, is although he's a competent grappler, I know he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Rufus Sport MMA fighter, Allen has tendencies to overcommit on positions, especially when going for submission. And this fight, although these may be accomplished grapplers, you watch the Anthony Hernandez fight. There are a number of other fights for Brendan Allen, and I have some serious concerns. I know that Allen had some success on the regional scene in LFA, but I'm watching tape on this fight, and I don't have conviction in this pick. Kevin Holland is going to be the pick. This is at 185 pounds. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 180. The first few fights on this card are expected to go to a decision, but then we hit a hot streak where there are about 7 fights in a row where things are really going to heat up. So give me Kevin Holland with the 16-4 record to get this done. Before I move on, very quickly, Kevin Holland, something that really shocked me. The guy is huge, 81-inch reach. I wonder why he wants to go back down to 170 pounds. I've heard that in an interview. He does have a win over Jeff Neal at that weight, but the guy's 26 years old. He's grown into his body, and I believe he's better served at 185 pounds. Could fill out a little bit more, though. All right, so let's continue this. We head to the welterweight division, where we have Shawn Brady taking on Court McGee. Shawn Brady fighting out of Philadelphia. Reminds me a little bit of Eddie Alvarez, his physique, minus the wrestling. We've got Shawn Brady, CFFC fighter. He's definitely got heart. He's got some promise, but he's taking on a Court McGee who, the guy is, you talk about a grinder, Court McGee is the definition of a grinder. He comes in and he is one of the toughest outs in mixed martial arts. You watch through his career, he's only really been blown out of the water by Ponzinibbio, and that was a few years ago. So Court McGee coming in, one of the bottom of the barrel priced fighters in DraftKings at 7,000. Plus 175 underdog, has win over Alex Garcia, where he basically, this is a guy who gets off on breaking his opponent's will, and we've seen that happen a number of times throughout his career, even when he was back with Hackelman many years ago. Shawn Brady, when you're banking on him, he's a minus 215 favorite. The line has been closing. I believe he opened around minus 235, minus 240. 9,200 in DraftKings. I'm not going to have any part of Shawn Brady in my portfolio. He's 26 years old. He's got a decent ground game, 72.5-inch reach. One thing that when I watch his fights, I mean, he has his physique. You watch him. I'm expecting more power out of this guy. I'm watching his fights. He's not really a finisher, and his fights on the regional scene, they leave something to be desired. And I honestly think the guy comes in at 167 pounds. He looks like he could make 155. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 240. McGee, although he's not going to throw at volume, the later this fight goes, this is one of those cases where you're taking a chance on a on a debut fighter who hasn't tasted defeat. McGee is a live dog in this spot. He's going to have to get through the first couple of runs, but I'd say about a round and a half in, he may turn it on, and he's going to be at a disadvantage from a volume perspective. Brady does throw hands, has decent boxing. We've seen Brady lock up a couple of submissions, but I have concerns the later this fight goes. Give me Shawn Brady, split decision victory, Shawn Brady, but I'm going to be avoiding in DraftKings. Next up, men's 145-pound division. We've got Shawn Woodson, who we saw coming off of the Contender Series with sporting a 6-0 record, taking on Kyle Bochniak, who has been around the block. Bochniak, believe it or not, only has an 8-4 mixed martial arts record. One of Joe Lauzon's training partners, Bochniak Crash. He really lives up to that nickname. Comes in as a -130 favorite, 8,400 in DraftKings. Bochniak is there to be hit. He's got heart, but he's been outmatched from a technical perspective. At 8,400, I think you are taking a chance here. This fight is expected to go to a decision at -245. Shawn Woodson was in there against McKinney in his Contender Series fight and was really, he was being taken behind the woodshed on the ground. I heard he cut 20-plus pounds on 4 days' notice, came into that fight, was depleted. The guy is incredibly tall, has a huge reach advantage, has, I don't want to say great stand-up, but he's got great boxing at that weight class. James Krause at Glory MMA seems to be doing wonders with some fighters out there. Now, you're taking a chance on a guy who's 6-0 here. I am unable to completely evaluate his skill set at this stage in his game. We do know who Kyle Bochniak is at 32 years of age. I was at Kyle Bochniak's fight against Jeremy Kennedy. In fact, I was sitting a couple of rows in front of his family and friends, and Kennedy had him stuck on the bottom, and family was saying, "Get up, get up, get up!" And he wasn't working his way up in that fight. He went blood and guts with Charles Rosa. He's, I think a lot of people took too much stock out of his fight with Zabit. The guy is tough, I'll give him that. But in this spot, I think Woodson, even with the limited tape that we've seen on him, we know that he can end fights and that he has some volume in his back pocket. Bochniak's going to come out here, try to push a pace. He does have a great gas tank. I'll give him that as well. But this is a spot where I'm expecting a very, very close decision. And on home turf, Bochniak may get the nod. So I'm going to... The pick here is going to be Woodson, though. I'm going to pick Woodson as the underdog. Next up, we've got Boston Salmon taking on Randy Kosta, men's 135-pound division. This fight, first one in a few fights that we discussed, that is expected to end inside the distance at -145. Boston Salmon coming in as the -145 favorite, $9,000 on DraftKings. Randy Kosta, only 4-1 overall record. Randy Kosta, another Joe Lauzon fighter, went to Bridgewater State. 7,200 in DraftKings, +125 underdog. Kosta is going to bring the fight to Boston Salmon. He does. in all of his fights. Problem is, sometimes, as we've seen, he's not worried about what's coming back at him, which can be a problem when you're fighting a counter striker such as Boston Salmon. We know Kosta has hands. Boston Salmon does as well. Khalid Taha sparked out Boston Salmon in his last fight. Salmon was coming off of an ACL repair and had a long layoff. So the frustration has to be mounting on Salmon's part. We didn't get to see what Salmon was made of in his last fight. Taha came out and just put his lights out in the opening minute. Extreme couture fighter. Heard great things about Boston Salmon in the gym, but as we've seen many times before, sometimes folks can't perform under the bright lights. So Kosta is a live dog in this spot, 7,200 underdog. But the problem I have here is Salmon is going to be looking for those counters, and this is a spot where I believe he's gonna come through. So give me Boston Salmon. The problem is, though, Boston Salmon is not a high volume striker. So if Kosta gets up early, he could have a lead to fall back on. But this fight should end inside the distance. So give me Boston Salmon to end inside the distance. Next up, we've got Molly McCann. Molly the Meatball McCann taking on Diana Babita. Babita, Romanian fighter, 13-4 record. I tweeted about a week and a half ago before the lines came out. Babita, look at who she's fought. Incredible that she's getting this opportunity right now. She's coming in with a 6-inch reach advantage. Babita 6,800, bottom of the barrel as far as DraftKings goes, plus 440 underdog. Molly McCann opened as a minus 350 favorite. McCann got choked out by Jillian Robertson in her debut. 9-2 overall record for McCann. 9,400 in DraftKings. Minus 575 favorite. Now, you got to think, what does she have to do to put up a score that's worthy of rostering her in that spot? She does have the ability to land volume. This is one of those cases that you have a low-level women's mixed martial arts fight, and you have someone who is a very aggressive fighter, bully mentality when in there, and this is the type of niche sport where you can get away with just aggression winning. And Molly McCann, you see, is going to get her the victory in this spot. She, as we've seen in the past, is willing to fight through just about anything. Against Priscilla, she got busted wide open, suffered the broken orbital where she had to undergo surgery afterwards. That did not stop her. She also came out, looked competent against Lipsky. And in this spot, there's a snowball of momentum that is headed Babita's way, and I am going to be picking with ease Molly McCann here to get a win. I wouldn't be surprised if she comes through inside the distance. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 175, but give me Molly McCann in this spot. Again, look at Babita. Look at the competition that she's faced. And unless something has changed in the training room, something dramatically behind the scenes, I don't see her getting a victory in that spot. Next up, we have the men's 145-pound division. We have a very intriguing matchup between somebody who missed weight and Charles Rosa. We've got Manny Bermudez, who jumped up a weight class, came in at 148 pounds. Right now, Manny Bermudez sitting at a minus 155 favorite, 8,700 in DraftKings, taking on the Renaissance man, Charles Rosa. Rosa plus 135 underdog, 7,500 in DraftKings. We haven't seen Rosa in a few years. Believe it or not, he had been fighting for quite some time with a pretty severe neck injury that hadn't been addressed. And finally, he after his loss to Shane Burgos, he went back to physical therapy, spent some time on the mend. This is a guy who's a world-renowned chef, believe it or not. Went to Johnson and Wales, and you can actually go on YouTube and watch him delivering food from a restaurant to Rory McDonald at his hotel room. So Charles Rosa is a volume striker who has a jiu-jitsu background, black belt jiu-jitsu, tough kid from Boston, spent a lot of time down in Miami, and he's been at ATT for a number of years now. You got Manny Bermudez, who's also from Boston. Bermudez appears to be the less athletic fighter. Bermudez coming in with a 14-1 record. Last time out, though, Bermudez, they had to, as you know, make a catch weight for him against Casey Kenny. Casey Kenny is a rising star, in my opinion. He beat Ray Borg and took out Bermudez, and the sky's the limit for that kid. I think he should be fighting at 125 pounds, but he came up to 140 and disposed of Manny Bermudez. Now, Bermudez in this spot is coming in with a 2.5 reach advantage. The stand-up, Bermudez does have a straight right hand that seems to work for him in the pocket. He also is a very slick submission grappler. We've seen it be effective even at the UFC level against Davey Grant and a few other fighters. In this spot, knowing that Bermudez came in overweight, he looks like he should be fighting at welterweight when you watched him at the scale and also at the ceremonial weigh-ins. Rosa, he's proclaimed that he's leaps and bounds, making improvements in the strength department since rehabbing his neck. I expect this fight to hit the ground. Rosa could win a volume-based striking battle, but when this fight does hit the ground, Bermudez, although he is the lesser accomplished grappler, I believe he does have more talent, and he has the stronger submission game. Give me Manny Bermudez to win this fight inside the distance. Right now, the fight is expected to finish inside the distance at -150. Give me Manny Bermudez to win this fight. Line movement has also headed his way a little bit since he came in overweight. Speaking of fighters who came in overweight, we have to the men's 185-pound division middleweights here. We've got Deron Winn, who showed up 188 pounds for his battle against Darren Stewart. Darren Stewart coming over across the pond from England. Stewart, tough as nails. Stewart plus 105 underdog currently, $8,000 in DraftKings. 10-4 record. Stewart's got KO power. He's got a gas tank. He's willing to dig very, very deep. Tough guy. We saw against Shabazian how tough this guy is, and also versus Marquez. He's willing to go out on his shield. Tough out, though. Deron Winn, there's speculation whether or not he's 5'4", 5'6". The guy is extremely short for the weight class, and he's built like a brick shithouse. 8,200 in DraftKings, -125. Favorite undefeated fighter, a.k.a. Mini Cormier. Problem is, though, I have issues with his self-discipline. I am wondering, what kind of self-discipline does it take to not put food into your body? This is one of the easiest things to manage and to master here on planet Earth. And for someone to avoid doing that when you have a contracted weight, it just boggles my mind how fighters, this is one of their jobs to make weight. What you don't see NBA players or NFL players coming into their games where they have to weigh in before they play basketball. You have a contracted weight, and that's one of his only jobs. So I don't want to go off on a rant here, but if the UFC or Nevada State Athletic Commission, someone would implement a criteria where you are penalized in the fight for missing weight, that would make a huge difference. Point deductions would be huge. So Deron Winn coming in with a 3.5-pound weight advantage here. He's got a hell of a motor. I watched his fights on the regional scene and also obviously his wrestling matches through the years. This fight is going to be and should be fought in close. I have major concerns for Winn if he gets caught up in a clinch. He's susceptible to eating knees. He's susceptible to eating elbows in the clinch. But Winn, we didn't see it in the Spicely fight, but I suspect we'll see him shooting for takedowns here. Rinse and repeat. Throws heavy punches. I do think Winn should be the rightly favored fighter. I was shocked that this line hit plus 100 at a certain point, and we got in on that. So I'm gonna be picking Deron Winn to put up a decent DraftKings score, 80 plus DraftKings score in this spot, and Stewart is a very tough guy to finish, so I could see frustration on the part of Stewart in a 3-round decision. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 185. So give me Deron Winn to get the victory here. Next up, we have a really interesting fight between Jillian Robertson and Macy Barber at 125 pounds. Macy Barber, somebody who I've been on for a while now, came on to the scene, the future. This young lady does not lack any confidence whatsoever. Explosive fighter, growing by leaps and bounds in between each fight, though. You look at J.J. Aldridge gave her some big problems during that first round and a half in their last fight. Jillian Robertson, six of seven victories that she has have been finished inside the distance. Plus 115 favorite. Plus 115 underdog for Jillian Robertson, 7,900 in DraftKings. This fight isn't expected to go to a decision at minus 215. I have concerns for Macy Barber, her silo mentality. She bounces around from camp to camp. Minus 135 favorite, only 8,300 for Macy Barber. So I do suspect we'll see high ownership one way or another in this fight. I love Macy Barber's stand-up. I love her elbows. I love her kicking game. I love how she commits to her strikes. She's got great movement. She's able to bounce around in that cage. But the grappling, I do have question marks about her grappling, and just like the contrast to that is I have questions about Jillian Robertson's stand-up. So these two fighters are going to clash, and Jillian Robertson would be best served doing anything in her power to get this fight to the ground and somehow maintain top position, find the back of Macy Barber, and get a submission victory here. If that does not happen, Macy Barber should light Jillian Robertson up on the feet, especially the longer this fight goes. So as far as DraftKings goes, I believe you are going to want a piece of this fight. It's kill or be killed in this matchup. And we saw what Robertson did I know she fights out of ATT. We saw what she did against Froda on steroids in her last matchup. She also took care of Macedo. Before that, she had opportunities in the Bueno Silva fight, didn't come through in that spot. She choked out Molly McCann, only 24 years of age. But then you look at Maycee Barber, only 21 years old. This lady is propelled. I believe she is destined for greatness, but she seemed to be looking past her opponent. She's looking for that Paige Van Zandt fight. I'm going to be picking Robertson here to get the upset victory in this spot. I think that she is going to be the more composed fighter. I was a little shocked to see Aldrich, JJ Aldrich, having so much success early in their fight, and Barber was having trouble in the clinch. She's able to blast herself out of there, though, with those elbows. She's got those in her back pocket. So if she isn't able to pull those off, then Robertson could have some smooth sailing here. Give me Robertson to come up as the underdog in this spot. Next up, lightweight division. Very fascinating matchup. Could be the end of the road here for Joe Lauzon. Joe Lauzon shared in his interview during the media scrum just a few days ago that the plan was to retire if he had lost to Chris Grutzmacher, and guess what? He lost that fight in devastating fashion to the point where his corner had to throw in the towel. Yet here he is. Here he is again about 18 months later, back 27-15 record, taking tremendous damage. You watched that Iaquinta fight back in 2015. That was a life-changing beating, but there have been many others. Jonathan Pierce is going to be Lauzon's opponent. Pierce coming in, the line's now up to minus 165. 8,500 in DraftKings, 27 years old for Pierce. Joe Lauzon, 35 years of age, 7,700 DraftKings. Plus 145 underdog. We have a slight, almost identical reach advantage. Lauzon came in at 153 pounds. Lauzon running his own gym. You watch Pierce's fight on the Contender Series. He was put in some tough spots early. Fighting out of the MMA lab, 9-3 record. Pierce, I have some serious problems with him coming up from 135 pounds just a couple of years ago and losing fights at 135 pounds, losing fights at 145 pounds, taking submission losses. This is a problem. Challenge though is in this spot, you're going to need one side of this fight, because Pierce, if this fight goes longer than a round, he's going to pour on the pace and should get Lauzon out of there. I do not see this fight going the distance. Joe Lauzon usually comes into fights completely dialed in. He's a fast starter. That Stevie Ray fight, that's another life-changing beating. He was laying the hammer on Stevie Ray and just couldn't get him out of there. Something else in this fight is Lauzon's ground game. We haven't seen a submission victory from Joe Lauzon since 2012. There's a chance we see a submission victory here, and we see Lauzon ride off into the sunset, leave his gloves in the UFC octagon. I believe he's going to retire one way or the other after this fight. But I can't put too much faith in Lauzon's durability, and at this stage in the game, you watch the 4 or 5 minute mark of most of his fights. His head's bobbing around, and he just doesn't look the same. He doesn't have much in the gas tank. He's trying, but his body isn't there. So give me Jonathan Pierce to win this fight inside the distance, but I think it is a smart move to hedge with Lauzon either by submission or inside the distance in this spot. The line on Pierce was sitting at minus 125, minus 135. Now it's up to minus 165. That might be a dangerous play. Props to folks who were able to get in on that line early. One way or the other, somebody's going down in this fight. Next up, we have Ben Sisoli taking on Greg Hardy. ATT fighter Greg Hardy. Ben Sisoli fighting out of Australia. 7-2 record. Contender Series fighter Ben Sisoli. You don't like to see fighters win or take no contest due to eye pokes. Greg Hardy developing. We know exactly what Greg Hardy brings to the table. He's ruthless when he gets in the cage and the octagon door closes. Minus 315 favorite for Greg Hardy here. 9,300 in DraftKings. Coming off of the win over Juan Adams. He also defeated the lifeguard. Before that, Hardy is growing leaps and bounds every fight. His quickness pays dividends. And he's got fight-ending power as most heavyweights do. But this guy, look at that inside the distance line. This fight is expected to end inside the distance at minus 560. So solely, not much tape on him. Seems durable. He's only 6 feet tall. He's a brawler. And 6,900 in DraftKings. I don't see him surviving. Maybe last a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, if that. Plus 255 underdog. One of Dan Kelly's students. By the way, did you guys see Dan Kelly in the UFC in one of the corners recently? Man, he's aged dramatically. I don't think we're going to see Dan Kelly back in the octagon. So give me Greg Hardy to win this fight inside the distance, and he has the ability to pay off that 9,300 in DraftKings. Going to be tough to fit him into lineups though, so you have to get tricky out there. Next up, we head to the co-main event of the evening. This is a rescheduled bout between Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stephens. Not going to get too into this one. Both guys have identical reaches. Rodriguez comes in with a 12-2 record, coming off of the last second victory over Korean Zabi and the eye poke situation. Jeremy Stephens, Alliance MMA fighter, has most losses in UFC history. 8,100 for both of these fighters across the board. Right now, you got Jeremy Stephens as the plus 100 underdog. Yair Rodriguez at minus 120. The way I see this playing out is, in a way, similar to the Moicano fight, although you incorporate more kicks. I believe that Yair Rodriguez is going to manage his distance. He's going to frustrate Jeremy Stephens, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this fight ends inside the distance. I think Jeremy Stephens, he has the ability to end the fight at any moment. His power isn't going to falter. We saw in the Aldo fight, he ate that liver shot. That doesn't typically happen to him. Rodriguez, he is going to be landing at volume. He's going to be on his horse. I watch a lot of the Jeremy Stephens fights, and you can't count him out. You watch that Dennis Bermudez fight. That's kind of a blueprint for what to expect from Jeremy Stephens. I am staying away from this fight as far as the bookmaker goes. But Yair Rodriguez is going to be my pick to get the victory here, and I wouldn't be surprised if these guys don't bury the hatchet after the final bell rings or somebody gets put out. I'd be surprised if Dana White didn't meet with Jeremy Stephens privately to discuss. If you say your boy's going to die a day after Patrick Day passed away, that's disturbing. But hey, Jeremy Stephens is ruthless, and there are no emotions in this game. And the other thing is, no matter how many losses Jeremy Stephens takes, he still comes back to fight the same exact way. He doesn't act like a fighter has the most losses in UFC history, and sometimes that can carry you throughout your career. Confidence is huge. So give me Yair Rodriguez. Next up, we have the main event of the evening. We've got Chris Weidman taking on Dominic Reyes. Reyes, believe it or not, is coming in at a reach disadvantage in this spot, despite appearing to be the much larger fighter. 8,800 for Reyes. We've got Chris Weidman as the plus 145 underdog. 7,400 for Weidman. Chris Weidman, 35 years of age. Concern of mine is the amount of surgeries that Weidman has had. He's gone under the knife. He said on the Ariel Helwani show 22 to 23 times. He's had a significant layoff since the Jacare loss. I was at that fight. He was winning it. Believe it or not, he was winning that fight handily, except got caught on the forehead by a punch and went down. And I think it was Mergliata who was the ref in that spot and let it go a little bit longer than he should have. So Reyes coming in as a 8,800 in DraftKings, minus 165 favorite, only 29 years of age. Supreme athleticism on the part of Dominic Reyes. Played free safety in college, went to Stony Brook, and believe it or not, Stony Brook is going to be playing University of Oregon in football in 2021 at Outson Stadium. Chris Weidman, Hofstra wrestler, bursts onto the scene, fighting Damian Maia. I followed his career very closely even before he made it to the UFC. This is, I believe, could be a changing of the guard at this stage. Weidman is there to be hit with straight punches down the pipe, and you want to talk about a guy who is willing to commit to a straight punch. Reyes, southpaw fighter, he does lack the wrestling pedigree. Joe Daddy Stevenson has done a lot of work with Reyes. I was interested and I was surprised to hear that Reyes left the folks in Colorado to get back to his roots, but he had a lot of success in California, and to recognize after the fight with Ozdemir, to recognize that he had to overcome some serious adversity in that fight. It was a very questionable decision. A lot of folks believe Ozdemir won that fight, but we have a closely lined fight here, and Chris Weidman does have high-level wrestling that he hasn't been able to use. In fact, Longo and Serra wanted Weidman to take the fight to the ground against Jacare, and he is a very accomplished grappler. He has great jiu-jitsu, and if he gets top position on you, I wouldn't be surprised to see a triangle choke. I wouldn't be surprised to see a rear naked choke or an arm, a guillotine choke. There are a few scenarios I see taking place here. Weidman getting a submission victory. I think that is his path to victory. I could see this fight playing out similar to his fight with Gastelum in the later rounds. And if that doesn't happen, Reyes should win this fight by TKO, late first or early second. This is another fight where if Weidman doesn't come through, I think we'll see him retire here. I looked back in my old tweets and found that Weidman back in 2013, before the second Silva fight, revealed that he had 5 knee surgeries at that stage in the game. Reyes could come out with, he's got a great kicking game. He could look to attack Weidman's legs. But he's got to watch out for that takedown. And I have concerns for Reyes being able to get up after being taken down. I also have concerns about Reyes giving up his back and doing what comes natural to get up and not fighting submissions. So give me Dominic Reyes to win this fight inside the distance, and at minus 165, I don't see this fight going the distance at minus 400, but you're looking at the difference between Reyes, minus 165 versus, I believe his inside the distance line is minus 120 right now. So want to wish everybody a great day out there. We got this podcast coming out early. The sun just rose behind me. Have a great day. I want to thank MMA Oddsbreaker as well as BetDSI for supporting the podcast. You can follow me on CapperTech as well as BetMMA.Kick tips. Have a great day. Enjoy UFC Boston.